YouTube, and it's on the website blessradio.org. This is the Tuesday night spiritual discussion show. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abdul Shin, which is a spiritual knowledge of life. And the topic for discussion tonight is possessed. You can join us in the discussion with any questions or comment. The number to contact us is 079 444 313 66. That's in a UK number. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're going to contact us from outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. So as I mentioned, the topic we are discussing is possessed, and we've already had a few questions already, so I'm just going to briefly recap on that. First, we talked about what is possession. So we're talking about the possession of a human being on the earth. So what that is, my colleagues earlier have said it. Brother Gregory is on the show, Brother Femi is on the show, and also Brother Rainer, and I'm Brother Saad. So Brother Gregory has explained already that the possession of a human being on the earth is another human soul who does not have his body, which can be referred to as a ghost, meaning that a human being without his body still on the earth, and that we call it an alien spirit. Let's call it, because all human beings are spirit, so let's call that an alien spirit is trying to take possession, or is taking possession of a human being on the earth. So that is what the meaning of possession is. And then we said, how can that happen? Maybe I'm going to ask Brother Femi. Would you like to just recap on that one, Brother Femi? How can the possession happen?
Okay. I touched briefly upon this in my last answer,
yeah,
when I was talking about giving an example of a smoker.
Yes.
So, like I did mention
Yes.
in explaining exactly what a ghost is,
Yes.
the general terminology ghost, which most people just understand as some disembodied form that suddenly appears and disappears, is generally speaking a human soul that does not have its own physical body, but it is still tied to this physical plane that we call this earth. Why does that happen? Loads of reasons. It could be from someone who was murdered, or who committed a murder, to someone who has so weighed himself down with indulging in activities that are of a very dense physical nature, which can only happen here on this earth. So when such a spirit, such a soul, when it leaves its body in its desire to continue to enjoy or to continue to experience those low-level desires that it has, in certain instances, it is trapped, so to speak, on earth, and such a soul is referred to as an earthbound soul. So why does possession happen? The soul that inhabits a body that is attempting to influence that body, and possession happens at different levels. There are different levels of possession. A human being who temporarily gets so angry and effectively exposes himself through the kind of energy radiation, through the type of waves that he is emanating, exposes himself to another entity that carries anger within itself, but that does not have a physical body to manifest that anger. Such a being, such a bodiless being, is able to temporarily connect itself with the human being that is emanating that very intense form of anger, and in the process he uses the physical body. So we've all heard of scenarios of people committing actions out of complete rage that would never have been attributable to that person. The reality is, in such cases, the person is not necessarily acting alone. And even medical science and psychology recognizes this kind of phenomenon. Another example that I would give is the example of sleepwalking. Again, these are things that we hear about, or of zombies, where someone happily goes to bed, and for whatever reason during the course of sleeping, he, in quotes, wakes up, does various things, goes back to sleep, and he's totally unaware of those things which he was doing, because in that scenario, he was temporarily not the one who was in control of that physical cloak. So why does possession happen? Generally, it's because the human soul that inhabits a physical body has allowed it to happen through some form of weakness within that soul. So the bottom line is, possession can only happen to those who expose themselves as a result of their own inherent spiritual weakness. A human being that is spiritually strong cannot be possessed, because it is only a lower form of a human soul that is attempting to cause one form of disruption or the other through its desire to manifest its weaknesses here on earth, that engages in what we call possession. So the human being that owns the body that is being possessed fundamentally has allowed it to happen through a weakness in that human body, in that human spirit. And when one goes slightly further to understand that the connection between the physical cloak and the spirit is based on the connection through the blood that flows through our vein, then we can begin to gradually understand, therefore, that for another soul to be able to manifest its nature through a physical cloak that is here on earth, must mean that the blood that is flowing through that physical cloak is of a nature that it allows that connection to happen. So where the blood is pure, and where the human soul that inhabits the physical body is of a strong spiritual nature, possession can never happen. But where the soul has very deep weaknesses.
Oh, Brother Femi, are you still there? This one. Hello, Brother Femi, are you there? Okay, I think we might have lost Brother Femi. I'm going to go to Brother Reiner now. Brother Reiner, actually I wanted you to answer this question about why somebody can be possessed, but I just want to ask you, could you add a little bit further to what Brother Femi has been saying about why somebody might be possessed?
Yes,
Yes.
he mentioned the blood radiation of a person, and this blood radiation depends on the composition of the blood, and it depends on many factors: what we eat, what we drink, primarily the nourishment, but also on such things: do we move a lot? Do we move sufficiently? It's a health issue. It's a life. It's how we live, what we eat, how we move. But apart from that,
oh, you're back.
course,
Good. Yeah.
apart from that,
Yeah. Just 1 second, Brother Reiner. Brother Femi, are you back now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I've got Brother Reiner talking at the moment, so we're gonna continue with him now, because he's carrying on. Yeah, he's continuing from what you were saying. So apologies,
so
Brother.
this blood radiation that changes continuously maturing age, and nature's doing that. So a child becoming an adult, each day the blood changes, and especially at the age around 17, 18, when the child becomes either man, or the girl becomes a woman, or the boy becomes a man. There's a lot of changes going on in the blood, and consequently the radiation changes. Now, under certain circumstances, that radiation can allow another soul in the beyond take over the body. Mostly that is the brain for the first stage, which is called central in it, and it causes an incredible confusion and disarray in the brain of the possessed person. And often those taking possession, like we have it in schizophrenia, that happens around this time in most cases, when they are kind of 15, 16, 17, and then they are possessed by something. Now that is an intruder, we know that. We said it, an alien spirit taking over, abusing your body. Of course, it's much more dramatic than a rape. This penetration into someone else, and you have then all kinds of things. It can be in the easiest cases voices you hear, but the voices, they can be.
I can't do it. I don't want to get in with it.
The voices you hear, they can into incredible torment. They are as real as what you hear. And I read recently a case story which I let you know a little bit more about as a case for a possession. The girl, when she was haunted by those voices, and they were screaming and screaming that she couldn't hear the other people around, she put on her earphones and turned them full up, and the voices were still louder, and they were kind of inside and outside. You hear them completely real. Then now, of course, there are many other forms how you can be taken over, that alien spirit or that intruder can, of course, take over more than just the parts of the brain or the organs. It can take, in the extreme case, over the whole body, and even move with that body. Then now you have a completely different person, and you are facing a completely different person. It's a kind of multi-personality trait, and then a whole completely different person possesses that body, and of course acts differently, speaks differently, has a completely different character than the person who actually owns the body by nature. So it's a quite dramatic thing when that happens. And what I wanted to tell you is, it is because of the blood radiation which allows that. Now, when the blood radiation changes after a few decades, normally that possessing spirits, or those possessing spirits, it can be more than one. It can don't find anymore the possibility to possess the other spirit, because that aging, the blood radiation, the blood composition changes again, and you turn into another phase of your life. That you turn into the choleric stage, and you turn into the phlegmatic stage and of your life. And normally the voices then become weaker and weaker, and it becomes more difficult to obsess. But often that also goes on through a whole lifetime. In our societies, those cases are, of course, locked away in silence, and you can see them at times in the Western societies, and they are normally just not visible, or if they are visible, they are heavily drugged, and they're walking kind of around in in a zombie state, the arms just hanging around, and of course there are also now drugs which quite help to make it to make it more difficult for the intruder to possess a body, and so medicine can do also quite a lot in this respect. But of course, naturally, what Abdushin suggests is that the medicine of the future, or what medicine should do, it should take much more a closer look at the blood and find out ways to direct the blood circulation into the right direction, that a possession is not possible anymore. And most of the drugs which work, which are used to treat schizophrenic persons, of course, interfere in some way with the brain, and they are inhibitors of some sort, or just the contrary, and they just affect the neurotransmitters and the reabsorption of the neurotransmitters and those things. Of course, if you interfere with the brain, it cannot be used anymore by an outside person so effectively. But of course the side effects are tremendous, and so your own brain doesn't function anymore, so you have also lots of difficulties working properly or being able to think properly. But just to repeat one thing, this taking possession of another person, this intrusion into another body, is an incredible process which creates havoc in the brain cells and leads to that person is disabled, and often they fight against it with all their might, against those intruding voices commenting on what they say or insulting them, undermining them, their personality. Most of the times they are very, very dark spirits, evil spirits, and really driving the other person to death, so that the possessed person commits suicide. They try to do that again and again and again, and the voices command and scream at them and insult them, and of course the whole undermining of their personality, of their self-confidence, goes hand in hand. They are not good spirits. If someone tries to intrude into another person's body, any lighter spirit definitely would not do that, because that is worse than raping a body, this intrusion. And the results are so dramatic for that person, and you're taking away the life of that person, in fact. Like many a person knows who has contact with a schizophrenic person, especially with a serious, the full-blown schizophrenia. They live in vain here on earth. They are practically, it's a ruined life, decades taken away from them. And let me just read some little case I've got here. It's a girl, a 17-year-old girl, and I just read it. Laurie Schiller, I just read it here from the book cover. Laurie Schiller was the perfect child, bright, affectionate, and joyfully alive. The firstborn and only daughter of a close-knit family, she led a carefree, tranquil life, unaware that within her a secret illness was taking root. Well, from the Grail message we know there is not an illness really, or schizophrenia yet. It's just that another soul takes over, intrudes into a body. Then at the age 17, she began to hear voices in her mind. And she told no one. Although the voices became more frequent and sinister, she still managed to graduate from high school, go to a good college, even begin a career. She describes that now, how she was fighting against the voices, not telling anyone, and still made her exams, going even to college, finishing her college still with A degree. She was an absolute top child, always getting A's. And she finished Tufts University in Boston, which is a very reputable university. She still succeeded in doing that. But then, of course, after that, the voices took over her life, and she committed, and I just read on. By 23, the voices seemed to take total control. Rory made her first suicide attempt. Soon she was pulled into the mental health care system, beginning an ordeal of institutions, halfway houses, relapses, more suicide attempts, and a screaming full-blown schizophrenia that seemed beyond muffled. Of course they defended themselves, and they screamed, and they knew they were losing their foothold in the body. It's an incredible, interesting book, and you can see how they were thinking, how those people obsessing her were trying desperately not to lose their grip on that body, which they would have driven, of course, to suicide. She made many suicide attempts. They are described as slashing her wrists, all types of things, and of course, the whole makeup changes, the whole view of life changes. You become clogged. I mean, you become. She called that a gunk in her brain, or a resin, a gunk which glues everything together, an impurity, because other people, dirty people, possess it. Imagine just you are being broken in and someone goes into your flat with dirty shoes, throws everything out, you're being robbed. Often people feel for months bad about that. Now you try to imagine if someone intrudes into your body, how that feels. Even a girl, after she's raped, she feels terrible for months and takes showers, try to clean herself again to get away that impurity. It's a terrible ordeal. Well, this is a proper nightmare. It's nothing, it's really a proper nightmare. And it's driving many people to suicides. And quite interestingly, of those possessed people, it's exactly 1% of the population, at least it was in the 90s. Statistically very interesting. And it depended on nothing, not on culture, not on anything. In Borneo, a tribe living in the forest had 1% of schizophrenic persons, as in our Western society, as in the United States, or probably the same thing as in Uganda or South Africa. It's every 100th person suffers from that. I do not know recent figures, but that was the figures from the 90s, at 1995, which I still remember. So I think I will let now the other speaks. But schizophrenia, that is obviously an illness which is caused by possessed persons. Medicine, of course, says it's all in your mind, but they cannot say anything else because it's a materialist science today. They do not believe in souls. They believe just in the body of flesh, and this machine, the brain, for some inexplicable reason, produces those hallucinations. They have no idea, of course, why those hallucinations happen. They call it, for example, the voices, they are called auditory hallucinations. Well, if that's just caused by the brain, why does never anyone hear just nice music as a hallucination, or a nice voice singing an opera song or something? No, it is always very, well, evil spirits, the lowest kind, very often. And I will read a little bit about those. There are, of course, different ones, but most of the time they are very nasty. And even the ones which are not so nasty, sometimes that happens.
If I could just come in briefly there.
Yeah.
I think it is important to recognize that, as with everything in life, everything is in a phase or has a scale. So the explanation that Brother Ryder has been given here is where somebody is clinically diagnosed as being a schizophrenic. one could say tipping towards an extreme in terms of possession. But it is very important for us to realize and recognize that it is very possible for any one of us to be temporarily possessed from time to time. And so one needs to understand the laws of creation to be able to have a good insight into how this happens. We've talked extensively over the past few months, years on this radio station about the law of homogeneity. And it is a fundamental aspect of attracting another into your sphere that has the ability to impact you in such an incisive way. So let us take drinking as an example, or using drugs. We all know that there is a natural protection, a natural psychological or physiological or even spiritual protection that everyone has. It's there, but sometimes we do crazy things that breaches that natural protection that we have. So the teenager or the alcoholic who chooses, and that's the key point, he chooses to indulge in alcohol. In the process of doing that, he disturbs the radiation of his blood. Now, we've already explained that a key aspect of possession is the radiation, the nature of the blood that exists within that physical body. And so, through the use of various substances, it is easy enough to change the radiation of your blood. And when you do that, either knowingly or unknowingly, you unconsciously lower the barrier of the natural protection that you have, and you therefore become exposed. So that is another example of possession, which is why you see people who are drunk, staggering on the streets. Yes, of course, something is happening in the brain as a result of the alcohol, but it is more than that. They have basically allowed themselves to be exposed to being possessed. That's one example. Another example that I gave earlier on is that of somebody who is perpetually going into one form of rage or the other because of their natural tendencies, which is a form of weakness. So again, where that person is exhibiting those tendencies, they naturally lower the bridge, and the law of attraction, of homogeneity, kicks in. So all the disembodied souls that are out there that are looking actively for a way of manifesting this rage or this anger or this annoyance that they carry within themselves, they automatically find such people as attractive targets. And so in the display of anger, in the display of excessive passion, the reality is it is not just that individual that occupies that body that is propelling the body. In scenarios where the individual has, in quotes, weakened their bloodstream, their blood radiation, they are automatically exposed to external personalities influencing them subconsciously. So it is good to be aware of the extreme cases of schizophrenia, of sleepwalking, where these are entities that have completely taken over a physical body for a period of time. But in most cases, on a daily basis, and I'm sure that we have all experienced it at one time or the other, where someone
I think it's
momentarily
the iPhone.
goes off at a tangent. The possession, the temporary possession, actually does happen. So it is up to each one of us to fortify ourselves through the nature of the
because this one doesn't have
the nature of the activities that we engage in, the nature of the thought processes that we engage in, to therefore
the WhatsApp is not set up
limit or make it practically impossible for lower tendencies, for lower radiations, for lower souls that are inclined towards evil or towards the darkness to be able to penetrate into our own natural sphere of influence. So the individual, each and every one of us, has a lot to do with ensuring that we protect ourselves, and the key to possession is in the blood. So through a more focused understanding of the nature of what we eat, the nature of what we drink, what substances we're indulging in, it is very possible for someone who is either temporarily or in quotes permanently possessed to actually dissociate itself from the possessing entity, because once the spiritual bridge that allows that soul to temporarily or permanently occupy that body is no longer there, then that soul can no longer manifest within that physical cloak. And so the onus is on each and every one of us to actually get the awareness and the knowledge of why these things happen, how these things happen, because then we're able to protect ourselves in a more robust manner. And this is, for me personally anyway, this is where the Grail message comes in, because this is the only book that I have come across from my extensive reading that explains very clearly exactly what possession is and the machinations of the entities that attempt to possess another person. So I'll stop at this stage because I'm sure that others will have things to contribute.
Thank you, Brother Rainer and Femi. I just want to tell the listeners you're listening to Bless Radio. You can listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and search for Bless Radio 1. You can listen to us on the website, which is blessradio.org. And this is the Tuesday night spiritual discussion show. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin, which is a spiritual knowledge of life. And we have a topic of discussion for every week. The topic for discussion tonight is possessed. And we'd love you to join us with any questions or comments that you might have on the topic. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. If you're contacting us from outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. And just to let you know, if you are interested in finding more about the Grail Message or get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'm going to spell it again. It's www.grail, that's GRAIL, message, MESSAGE.com. So I want to, Brother Rainer, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to reply. Of course, we must be very careful here. Not every kind of influence which works on a person and drives the person to flip out or lose his temper is caused by a possession, of course. There are many other influences. Also, what Brother Femi said, for enjoying something what another person is, if you are in the beyond and you are used to alcohol, or an alcoholic who died and craves the thrill to drink alcohol, he is not necessarily possessing. He's not possessing the other person. He's just enjoying that in the vicinity is enough. The possession itself is, in my opinion, something which happens very rarely, or happens, as I said before, about 1% of the population, and is really taking over the body, taking over the brain, and it causes a disarray in that nervous system in every time, complete confusion of thought, and that doesn't go away after you've been possessed. That's not something you can heal so quickly. So there's completely disordered, chaotic thought processes going on. And of course you find a clean break in personality. You can have, for a man can, the voices she had, for example, in that case, they were all men, and they were completely different from her. There's a real break. You can see this is another person acting there, completely different. There's nothing to do with the old one. It's not that the same person is becoming angry and screaming and perhaps even taking the gun and shooting 100 people in a concert or something. This is not necessarily a possession. You have to observe. You have to be there. A possession is when there is a break in. When you look from the outside, there's a break in personality. It's another person suddenly acting, and you feel that very well. You feel that very easily, and you think actually this is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and they can be completely incompatible. They are completely incompatible. That was a high school, grown up in a very nice, happy family with happy parents, was the darling of the mother all the time, and suddenly she was exposed to those voices which used the foulest of languages and insinuating, dirty, insinuating, insulting, and she tried to defend it. So, and that's of course the mildest thing if you're just taking over the auditory system of the brain. But her whole attitude of life and how she saw things, how the distrust is incredible, that a personality change which happens. Often it happens with, you think secret messages are being conveyed to you. A wonderful film was A Beautiful Mind, who has that scene. That person who suddenly thought there are secret messages everywhere, and looked in newspapers and read journals. This famous American mathematician, I think it was called Nash, if I'm not mistaken, a Nobel Prize winner, and they can instill all kinds of things, like persecution. You feel persecuted, you start distrusting anything. That often goes hand in hand, but the main thing is someone else is taking over you, and you engage in a power struggle. That girl engaged in an incredible power struggle. She was fighting those voices back all the time with all her willpower, tried not to let anyone in her surroundings see it, till at one point she succumbed, just thought, if I do what they say, if I jump out of the window now, the voices will be, I will be dead and the voices will be dead. That's of course an illusion. And but I think one must make a difference between influencing someone in a not possessive way and influences we are subject to, but which do not involve possession. Now this of course requires a lot of looking at real cases and studying them. It's actually what the Grail message requires or says is always, it's not just reading the lectures, it's finding them in life again, and then you have to look at life, and there the difficulty starts, and you get different interpretations, like Brother Fleming and I do, but it's a very important thing. It's very difficult, and of course we are a little bit out of our water here because none of us works in a psychiatric hospital. But just one thing which interests me is now in other cultures, in our culture, the possessed person is locked up. How is that in the Nigerian culture or in Jamaica? In Nigeria, do they have mental hospitals there, or do you find someone being with schizophrenic and acting in a dangerous way, walking around in the village or something? So that's a question to our Nigerian colleagues.
Yes.
That we've got two Nigerians here.
So, yes, thank you, Brother Ryan. I just want to say, yes, has any of you had any personal, not maybe necessarily personal experience, know someone who has been possessed? So I'm going to ask that to my fellow colleagues. That's Brothers Rainer, Gregory, and Femi. Has any of you come across somebody who's been possessed? So you have a personal experience of that sort of person. So let's say that to Brother Femi. Brother Femi, have you had such an experience? Not personally, but know somebody.
Of course, you come across different people with different issues, so to speak. But in terms of my being able to categorically say that this person is permanently possessed with a being that is not that person's person, no, I haven't personally experienced it before.
Okay, so the same thing, our question I want to ask Brother Gregory and also then Brother Rainer. So Brother Gregory, do you know anybody like that?
It is very surprising that we are still skimming around what possession is, which is the appropriation of the physical body. And there are many. For one who talks too much, who has no control about his or her speech, that personality could be possessed by some other personality that has that strong tendency. So we experience or see people of that nature almost every day. The so-called schizophrenic people, we see them in the streets most of the time because their physical body is now being utilized, being controlled by another personality. However, it is said to be bad because the controlling physical body and the controlling personality has not got anything good to show, but is tending towards that which is not noble. That is where possession is bad. On the other hand, there are cases where the physical body is made use of for noble reasons. In that case, it is not said that the possession is bad. For there are many people, for instance, musicians, that conduct such beautiful music. And in that scenario, it can be experienced or noticed that the physical body is as if something else has taken over. And many a thing which could not be done normally seem to be going on. So one has to look at all the possibility. The possession we are talking about today is making use of a physical body which does not belong to you for ignoble activities. In that particular scenario, one can find many. So we don't need to say, Have you come across it? Go to the streets. You find them in quantum, where people are going somewhere, they don't know where they're going, as if they have been led somewhere else. There are some who are smokers. There are some who have taken all sorts of drugs, and that changes their bodily radiation, which now affects, just like a radio, which the frequency is being used as if you have double talk, like you have in radio stations sometimes. So these things are very practical, and for those who are discerning, they can easily observe it.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. And Brother Ron, anything from you? I know you shared it. You read something out from the the story of Laura Sheila. You said, is there any personal experience you've had?
One very important thing to add to what Brother Gregory said. There is a huge difference between being possessed and being connected to higher entities that support and help you. Possession by the expression itself is the taking over of that which does not belong to you. A noble spirit would never occupy and displace the spirit that exists within a physical cloak. At best, the noble spirit may indeed support the spirit that owns the cloak through its development, through inspiration, through like you said, the ability to do that which is beyond what that person would normally be able to attain or to achieve. But that does not mean that his cloak has been possessed by that noble spirit. So what I would like to do at this stage, just to clarify some of these things, is actually just read a couple of paragraphs from the Grail message itself, where this issue of possession is clearly dealt with, and it is very definite that possession is not something that you would want to happen to you, because it is something that is generally of an ignoble nature. So I read, where a person possessed by another spirit, that is, should an alien spirit periodically or continually make use of a body not belonging to it for the purposes of manifesting on the earthly gross material plane, then the physical body concerned would itself have to carry out everything that happens, such as throwing, hitting, scratching, and destroying, or in whatever way it is expressed. As soon as someone is possessed, the alien spirit concerned will always work directly through that physical body with which it has been able to connect itself, of which it has partly taken possession and which it uses for its purposes. It was only through this that the expression possessed arose, because an alien spirit takes possession of an earthman's body, appropriating it in order to work with it in an earthly, gross material way. The spirit also lays claim to the possession of the physical body alien to it. And this body is then possessed by the spirit, or we may also say it is occupied. The spirit places itself within the physical body, possesses it, or has periodically possessed it. So I think it is actually very important to understand, like again, Brother Reiner already explained, the fact that someone is behaving in demonstrating very intense rage, for instance, does not mean that he or she is possessed, because it doesn't mean that another has actually taken over the body. But it certainly means that that person has lowered the bridge for their behavior to be influenced by others that are beyond that individual. And in the same way, the same goes with those who are very preoccupied with doing great deeds of a noble nature. It doesn't mean that they are possessed. It means that they have enabled themselves to be able to connect to others that are able to influence them. And that influencing can be of a positive nature. So,
Brother Femi, you just stopped reading before two very important paragraphs. If you just could read the following two paragraphs where you stopped.
Okay, I shall do that for the benefit of the listeners.
Yeah, because then it really explains how this process of taking possession works and what it creates, and how the external visible signs to other human beings are. So if you just read it, it's quite natural. That's how it starts. You stop just before.
Sure. It is quite natural that the process of taking possession occurs, first of all, in the brains. Those earthmen to whom this happens are then described as being insane or not normal mentally, because there are often two different human spirits quarreling and fighting to use the brains. So I think that immediately settles this issue of, can you be possessed in a noble and uplifting way? The simple answer is no, that is not possible. You can be influenced in a beneficial way from a noble being, but a noble being would never attempt to crowd your spirit out of its natural body and take over your body. Now, continuing with the reading, it then continues. It says, thus, thoughts and words and deeds are expressed which contradict each other, often in confused succession and in incomprehensible chaos, because two different spirits are trying to impress their volition, the rightful owner and the intruder. Naturally, this also causes an overstraining of the nerves of the brain, which are literally shaken up and thrown into confusion. And man, observing this from outside, can only conclude that there is cerebral confusion, although the brain itself may be quite healthy otherwise. It is only the fight and conflict between the two different spirits which causes this confusion. So I think that kind of settles this issue about the nature of possession. It is a negative thing. It is another trying to crowd out the owner from its cloak. As has been explained, it leads to all sorts of brain dysfunction which results in the manifestation of unpleasant characteristics from the body that is being attacked through the intrusion. But that said, there is definitely a process in creation where noble higher entities are able to support and help those who are here on this planet that we call Earth. So we do get inspiration. We do get miracles. We do have amazing phenomena that we cannot readily explain, of a beautiful nature, but that is totally different from the concept of possession, which is a forced attempt by a lower being to take over the physical cloak of a human being here on Earth.
Yes, I think, thank you. That has made it very clear, and perhaps I can read out an illustration of that fight. I don't read out, I try to find a place in that book. Wait a second, about...
While you're doing that,
yeah,
while you're doing that, I will say something. So, yes, dear listener, you're listening to Blessed Radio, the spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail Message by Abrushin, which is a spiritual knowledge of life. And we have a discussion topic tonight, which is possession. And you can join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. If you're contacting us from outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. And if you want to, we just had a reading from the Grail Message with reference to the possession. If you want to get a copy of the Grail Message, or you would like to know more, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And while Brother Ryan is still looking there, I just want to share something very briefly about, let's say, my own personal experience of somebody who I consider was possessed at that point. And I won't mention any names, but somebody that I know. And basically, I know them very well. And somehow, I can say they were going out, as they normally do, to the shops, and then some incident might happen where somebody stepped over them or crossed over their path, and they would get suddenly very annoyed. But then they would completely lose control of what they were saying, and I will say what they were saying, which was swearing and stuff, which they never would say as in their usual life. And you could see that this was somebody else talking and not the person that I know that was talking there. So for me, it was clearly an example of being possessed. And I know that this person was depressed. They worry a lot. And as we have discussed already, when people are in a weak, you could say when their immunity is down, so basically they're vulnerable, and then evil human spirits take advantage of that and now take over that body and start. So you can say, so the person who is speaking, although it comes out from the owner of the body's mouth, there's their voice that is coming out, but the words are being spoken by somebody else, an alien spirit, which is taking possession of that person. So I've seen that happen, and so on. So I just wanted to relay that. So Brother Rainer, please, could you share what you were going to share now?
This is Lauren in the hospital, hospitalized, and I just read out, it's just talking about the voices. We heard just now that the brain is, of course, the first place where the possession is taking place. It's a fight for the brain, and the least a person can do, even not acting, is you hear voices. And I'm reading now. It seemed so strange that my fellow patients could enjoy the voices they heard in their own head. On my unit, one young man had voices who told him he was the Messiah. Another young woman always sat by herself laughing happily. Once I asked her what she was laughing about. "Hubert is telling me jokes," she said. She called him her playmate and often talked about how much she liked him. I was jealous. There was nothing about my voices that was friendly. I had tried to make them my allies against the hateful staff, but in reality the voices terrified me. Sometimes I told the staff they were gone, but I was lying. The voices were with me when I awoke. They were with me when I got dressed. They were with me when I ate. They were with me when I sat around the day room trying to think of something to do. I could not even find relief in sleep. The voices yelled so loud, they woke me up, leaving me shaking and frightened. The closest I ever got to a friendly voice was that of the narrator. He described my actions instant by instant, not leaving out even the tiniest, most insignificant thing. 100 times a day he commented on my movements. "She's now walking through the door," the narrator said. "She's wiping her feet, little ass. Wiping her feet on the rug in the entryway. She's going into the kitchen, ha 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 ha! You fat piece of lard, go to hell, ha ha ha! You look sad, you look like shit, you are shit." She's now walking into the day room. She's going to turn down the TV set. "To die, asshole, ha ha ha!" The narrator taunted me. That was the nicest voice. The narrator taunted me, made fun of me, sometimes even threatened me a little, but mostly just talked about what I was doing. And his manner was less intrusive, his voice level less loud, and his overall demeanor less scary than the other. I didn't fear him as much as I feared the other. I just wanted his annoying banter to go away. Sometimes I heard one voice laughing, a single witch-like voice that screeched and crackled in derision. Sometimes that voice would be joined by a second, and then a third. Sometimes they chanted the same thing over and over again, like voices rehearsing for a play. "To die," they chanted, "to die." I must have heard that 1,000 times a day. Sometimes more and more voices chimed in, until all the voices joined into a horrendous crowd, an appalling cheering section that had suddenly turned into a riot. These crowds of voices were loud, painfully loud. When I heard them coming, I would run for my Walkman, but often it was no use. They would scream and shout over even a rock tape turned up to 10. That was the Walkman time when you had cassettes. But even more than the narrator and the crowds, the voices I feared the most were the men who talked to me of hell. I don't remember thinking much about hell when I was growing up. Jews don't really have a hell, and in any case my family wasn't religious. My brothers were bar mitzvahed, and I was confirmed. But other than that, my family was what was jokingly known as twice-a-year Jews. That meant we appeared in temple only Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. No one ever taught me to fear punishment or eternal damnation. No one, for the voices, that is. The voices told me about a hell that was beyond all religious beliefs. It was worse than the worst horror movie I had ever seen. Worse than my worst nightmare. It was beyond all imagining, beyond all human hope. And it was completely and totally real. The voices told me so. And the voices told me they would take me there. As I sat in the quiet room, the voice that spoke to me was as clear and real as any other voice around me. In fact, it was more real because it was both inside me and outside me. He spoke directly to me in low, gravy tones, hoarse and husky, a true demon from hell. "Come to me," he crooned. "Come to hell with me." I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to hear. But I had no choice. Where could I go? How could I escape? He seemed to know that. He began to sneer. "Come to hell, cunt! You whore, you bitch, you asshole! To hell, to hell!" Beyond him I could feel the hell of this imagining yawning up to swallow me. There were red and orange devils and smoke and fire everywhere. There were only two kinds of people in his hell, the tortured and the torturers. Everywhere, almost as if on an assembly line, men were having their balls cut off and hung onto wooden poles. Women were being raped by piles of disgusting men at a time. The sounds of that inferno filled my ears, filled my head, began to consume my whole body. There were shrieking, shrilling, squealing sounds of victims in pain and the hysterical laughter from their tormentors. This was to be my fate. This was my destiny. The infinite pit of hell was reaching out to claim me. And then it got worse. This voice was joined by another, and the two began to argue. They shouted angrily at each other, struggling over my fate. I was at the mercy of these voices. Whatever they commanded would happen. I was totally helpless before their wrath. Their quarreling surrounded me. Voice number one, she must go to hell. Voice number two, she will be punished. She must be punished. Voice number one. Number two, she will be punished. That fucking whore. She must be punished in hell.
I think.
So
I
that
think,
goes on and on. I tried to escape, tried to flee, tried to punch them, wrestle with them, strangle them. Too late. I tried to leave their world, tried to return to the other world, the world of patients, the world of the hospital and nurses and dinner. I shouted for the voices to leave me. Stop it, I screamed at them.
Rainer,
yeah.
I think that the reading that you've given has clearly demonstrated the point you're trying to make, which is that possession is a horrible thing. It is not something you would wish on anyone, and it is of a low base nature. Now, why this lady is experiencing what she's going through, one would need to have a better understanding of the concept of reincarnation, because the fact that she seems to be a pleasant, well-mannered person, but is being tormented by these disembodied souls is not something which would have just happened in an arbitrary manner. There would be a definite reason why that particular individual has to experience the torment. But that is a topic for another discussion. So going back to today's primary discussion, which is possession, as I've said, you've given an extreme case of possession, which is a permanent torture by this young lady who is having to constantly battle with other spirits, other souls that are trying to occupy its body. Brother Saad gave a case, an example of what I call temporary possession, which is a person temporarily losing control and in the process allowing the influence of an external entity to have such a significant impact on it that it temporarily behaves in an abnormal way compared to the way he or she would normally behave. So possession, really, one can see it as being on a scale of very short term, spanning probably even seconds, to something which is of a more permanent, long-lasting nature. But that said and done, the purpose or the objective of this discussion is not so much to describe or convey the horrors of being exposed to possession, but it is more to, one, enable the listener to recognize that these things are real. These events, these negative, unpleasant experiences do happen to people here on earth all the time. What we need to do is to acquire real knowledge that will enable us to safeguard ourselves from being able to experience, from having the need to experience such avoidable and such unpleasant scenarios in our lives. And one of the most fundamental ways of achieving that, like I said, is to understand what life is all about, to understand what your role is in life, where you fit into the whole structure of existence, your existence and that of the wider group that you interact with, and to ennoble your activities, to ennoble your life in such a way that, contrary to the lady that was read about, whose day-to-day living was constant torment, ours could be constant joy, happiness, peace, and delight. But that would only happen because we've earned it, and we've earned it through the way we've lived our lives. So fundamentally, we need to live a noble, uplifting, and decent life. And having a clear understanding of the laws that governs our existence goes a very long way in helping us to achieve that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Brother Femi and Brother Rainer. I would like to move on to Brother Gregory now. Brother Gregory, we talked about this possession and examples of possession, and in that discussion we came across mental illness, and I wanted to ask you how people can know the difference, because mental illness, yes, the schizophrenia is a mental illness, and that is, in this case, was talking about possession, or in reference to possession. But from the Grail message, my understanding is mental illness is different from possession, and I wanted to ask Brother Gregory, how can we discover or spot the difference, basically, when something is a mental illness and when something, so let's say somebody's mad, let's say it that way, and then or they are possessed, because sometimes it looks like it's, you can't tell the difference. So Brother Gregory, are you able to help us with that?
Well, it's quite remarkable when the word mental is mentioned. Basically, the words mental referring to thought processes. And when the thought processes are not in harmony with the original, with the will of the owner as we know it, we then conclude something is not right. In this particular case of possession, it only means that the owner, this embodied spirit, has taken over these functionalities first in the brains. So that is the point of connection. Since they have taken over, they now do as they wish. So there is no clarity, it's no very distinct sharpness, and say, okay, you have a case of mental illness in which the person is unwell. Whenever you have the situation where the brain has no problem at all, is functioning accurately, and you have such behaviors as we have been talking about, then that is a case of possession. Whenever you have the case where the brain, there is some malfunction in the brain, one may refer to those particular cases as mental illness, in which no other thing has taken over but there is an incapacity of the brain to function as it should. So one distinguishes between making use of the normal brain as we know it. That means it's functioning efficiently, but some other personality is making use of it. And the other case, general mental case, where the brain is not functioning as it should. That means it has slight problems. Maybe it could be due to some physical injuries. So that is the scenario that I see. However, there is a particular scenario in which we know of the development of man, which has now resulted in the original sin, where the frontal brain has been overdeveloped in comparison with the back brain. Whether one should classify this as a mental case, I would not know, because that is the root of many evils. That is what has happened, that has changed many things within the functionality of man. But this is a physical issue in which the frontal brain has been overdeveloped in comparison to the back brain. So that also allows many a human spirit that has got the physical body, so it makes it easy for it to take over the physical body, because had there been normal development of both brains, the scenario which we are talking about today would not have existed at all, because the human spirit would have been strong enough. The vibrations of the physical body and the vibrations of the soul would have been harmonious as to avoid many a thing. So, on the one hand, we have the human soul. On the other hand, we have the physical body. In the case where we have this disproportionate overdevelopment of the frontal brain, that one may refer to as a mental case. Mental with inverted commas. For the human spirit or the human being on earth is not normal. It's no more normal because of this particular scenario.
Can I ask you to just go a bit further, because you've just sort of hinted that the frontal brain is overdeveloped compared to the back brain, but you haven't told us what is the purpose of the frontal brain and the back brain, to sort of give a highlight what exactly has happened with that. So what is the purpose of the frontal brain and what is the purpose of the back brain, and how come? Yeah.
This has to do with the structure of creation. Like the three of us, the speakers, have mentioned, the inner core of the human being is of spirit. For the spirit to mature, it had to leave its domain in the spiritual realm as an unconscious spirit gem. And in doing that, it had to go through the animistic realm domain, and it got into the world of matter. Whenever it passes through these regions, it takes on the cloak the appropriate cloak so that it can experience with it and make itself understood. And when it got to the world of matter, there are many subdivisions. In order to incarnate on earth, it requires a physical body. It is that physical body that it will use for its various experiencing. The tools which creation has provided for it to work harmoniously with the physical body, for the human soul to work harmoniously, are the frontal brain and the back brain. The activities of the human spirit impresses on the back brain. The back brain then passes these vibrations to the front. The frontal brain now makes these vibrations into the form, it then transforms these vibrations into the form that can be understood here on earth. That is what it's supposed to do. And they are supposed to work harmoniously. The frontal brain takes the responses, the experiences from the outside, and passes it back to the back brain, straight to the spirit for further experiencing and maturing. But in the course of its development, that did not happen, in that the human spirit or the human being here on earth relied solely on the frontal brain. And because it relied solely on it, the back brain was not equally developed, such that we have a harmonious give and take. The back brain gives that which is beautiful, so you have beauty. The frontal brain does the transformation, so it is the beast. That is where the expressions came, beauty and the beast. The frontal brain did the executive master to carry out the impressions which the back brain has required. Because of this unharmonious development, due to the volition of man, because it relied only on the frontal brain, we now have a situation where impressions from the outside do not get back to the back brain and back to the spirit. Therefore, the spirit is as if it's locked in within a sack, immature. Hence, we have this problem. And that is the so-called, the original sin, which has been described in biblical writings. Many religions or many tribes or many cultures have different ways of presenting it. What one has just mentioned, has just referred to, is only a tip of the iceberg. It is necessary for any person who is discerning to examine the work in the light of truth, to get the facts and the constructions on how these things have come to be.
Thank you very much, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, if you want to find out about the Grail message, you can go to this website or get a copy if you want of the Grail message, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. So yeah, thank you very much, Brother Gregory. Brother Femi, I want to ask you, we've been talking about all the problems of what is possession, and now I want to move on to how we can cure it or do something about it it's very hard to say, because somebody is trying to take possession or has taken possession of another human being, an alien spirit taking over the body of a human being on the earth. And as Brother Rainer has been reading from the examples of somebody's life who is affected very seriously, it seems to be very, very, it's like an incredible battle they have to go through. But as we know, don't want to make it like a mundane thing, but for every problem there's also a solution. And so I wanted to ask you, just before I ask you that, some people, I don't want to trivialize it, but some, you hear it from history that people who are possessed, their family, somebody will call in the priest, or they might call some medium, or they might call even, I'm going to use the word wizard or witch, who in quotes does some magic spell. I'm just saying that, people may take that as a trivial way, but I'm saying these things have happened, in order to remove that possession. So I wanted to ask you, Brother Femi, how can we do something about this if somebody is possessed? What can we do about that?
Okay, thank you for the question. Again, as I've emphasized and as has been indicated by the various speakers, possession has different levels and different depths. So the example which Brother Rainer gave, where he read about this young lady, as he told us, the process started years before, when she started hearing voices, but she carried on and she was able to successfully cope with it until it began to seriously torment her. That is one extreme. The example that you gave of someone that you know who, when he gets really upset, it's clear to you that the words that are coming out from his mouth actually do not belong to him. It is another case. It's a short-term possession scenario.
Just to add to that, that person was actually depressed and they were always worrying. And just to correct you a little bit, it is a she rather than a he, but not that's not the big thing.
Oh, really?
It's simply no, that's okay. I didn't state that, but basically they were depressed. They were always worried about what's happening in the family and so on, and it's like they were like almost paranoid, I can say. And so it's like we said it earlier, everybody has an immunity, but if if your immunity goes down, then of course disease can get you, right? But in this case, this was a possession case. So somebody, you are vulnerable, you allow yourself to become vulnerable through depression, not obviously deliberately, and that allows another spirit to attack you. So that's basically, I will say, it was temporary in the sense that in the end, that possession was ended through medicine. But let's say there was a lot of things leading up to it. So it wasn't like somebody just momentarily got angry and then there was more background than that. There was something leading up to it over some time, and then this came at the consequence of that led to the weakness and so on. So just to be aware of that.
Okay, that is useful to know, but it still does not fundamentally change anything. It doesn't change anything in the sense that for possession to happen, there are certain ingredients, there are certain components that must be in play for it to manifest. Otherwise, it cannot. As we've been saying over the weeks or the months, there are laws that governs creation. Those laws are consistent. Those laws will never change. Science is constantly attempting to understand those laws and to make use of those laws for our existence here in the world of matter. So you talk about drugs to help suppress or prevent possession. Now, I mentioned earlier on, which the Grail message explains most beautifully and very clearly, that the bridge between the human body and the human entity, the human soul or spirit, depending on what you want to refer to it as, the bridge is the blood. And so, without blood, there is no motion in the physical body. And so when we say somebody is dead, that means the absence of blood activity. The blood has congealed, or one form of disorder or the other has manifested in the blood, and so the blood is not able to fulfill its function of sustaining the spiritual life within that physical body any longer. So the key to possession, therefore, again, is the blood. But when we talk about the blood, what exactly do we mean, and how does the blood allow possession to manifest? I don't want to take too much time in explaining this, but there are a few clues that we have all experienced at one time or the other. So, for instance, you mentioned about calling in a priest to come and perform some form of exorcism to drive out this spirit that is possessing the physical body. Now, in 21st century, with the proliferation of Pentecostal churches and gospel churches, one of the more preferred approaches to doing this thing is to tell people to go on a fast. So when you go on a fast, what happens? Naturally, the nature of the foods that you would be consuming on a day-to-day basis that builds up within the blood stops. And so, over a period of time, the nature of the energy vibration, because bear in mind that everything is energy, basically, of one form or the other. These are natural concepts that even the physical sciences have come to accept. So our blood is basically a form of energy. And when the composition of the blood changes, the composition of the energy that is being emitted also changes. And therefore, for another to be able to synchronize itself with that energy that is being manifested through that blood, there has to be some homogeneity. And so, where through a drastic change of diet, for instance, an individual is able to fundamentally change the nature of its blood radiation, then where that individual was being attacked by lower entities trying to take possession of its body, the ability of them to be able to reach that soul in the same manner effectively becomes diminished. And so again, the individual has a lot to do with protecting itself through its diet. And it is quite instructive that in present day world, people are a lot more conscious about their diet. People are moving away from animal produce to eating organic stuff, moving away from eating canned stuff to eating natural stuff, and so on and so forth. All these minute changes that are happening, which is not necessarily immediately visible to us, or the ramifications of the changes are not immediately visible to us. These are actually very pivotal steps that humanity as a whole is taking. So, how do you protect yourself from being a subject of possession, or where you believe you have been possessed? How do you prevent it? So the first fundamental thing, as I've said, is serious looking at what are the things you are taking into your body. What is the nature of the base items that forms your
Tony,
bloodstream?
you want to go on the radio?
Is it
Hello,
artificial,
Hello, Tony?
mass-produced stuff?
You want to say
you're
something
consuming?
on the radio?
Are you indulging in heavy doses of animal products, and so on and so forth? You need to understand that and become more natural in terms of your feeding patterns. Also, a key part is the individual themselves and the nature of the activities that they engage in, the nature of the fundamental thought processes that they engage in, where someone is fundamentally of a noble, lighter nature and indulges in that kind of behavior and is surrounded by such, then the tendencies for negativity to penetrate that person's environment is somewhat reduced. I'm not saying that it's completely removed, because as Brother Ryder explained, in the case of the young lady that he gave, this appears to be a lady who was actively doing what would be considered to be the right things, in quote, and yet she was still being mercilessly attacked. So again, that brings in the dimension of past life experiences, because our life is a continuum. A young baby that is delivered on earth today in a brand new body has a spirit that could be thousands of years old. All the experiences, both so-called positive and negative, that this spirit might have gone through during its wandering in life is still connected to it. And so, even though that person may appear, to all intents and purposes, to be an extremely noble person, without having the insight into the nature of the life that that person indulged in prior existence, and therefore the nature of the threads of fate that are still directly connected to that person's soul, to that person's being, one is unable to make categoric statements as to why a seemingly pleasant, forward-looking lady has to experience those kind of things. But irrespective of that, one can categorically state that through a conscious recognition of the role of the blood in the life of a human being, and through a conscious effort to, in quotes, purify the blood, improve the nature of the energy vibrations that the blood is able to emit, you give yourself a stronger level of protection. Substance abuse, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, these are all agents that basically pollutes the blood and makes you more susceptible. And even where we're talking about medication being given to suppress these things, all that the medication is substantially doing is trying to change the energy patterns within the person's blood system to prevent the encroaching soul from being able to take possession in such a direct manner. So these are effectively temporary bridges, but the fundamental solution is one of the individual taking charge of their blood radiation through their diet. Two, taking charge of their life decisions, their life activities, and their life associations by looking for those which will, shall we say, for the want of a better expression, uplift them such that the lower line base vibrations that effectively forms what we would call evil, the denser vibrations can no longer penetrate into that person's vicinity. And so fundamentally, that is the solution to minimizing these kind of attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Femi. I'm just thinking if I should ask another question, because we've had our sort of time on the show, and so I want to go to Brother Rainer here. Brother Rainer, if you can just say it in a few words. You know, we've been talking about possession and, you know, what happens and so on, but I just want to clarify a certain thing. So we have a human being on the earth with their own body, right, and a disembodied a human being, let's say, I'm going to use the word ghost, basically being a human being without their body on the earth, trying to your soul, yes, yeah. Trying to take possession of that, the person who's on the earth in their body. Now, when that happens, are they able to remove the resident of the body, the resident spirit of that body? So the alien spirit, let's make it like that. So the human being that is on the earth, let's call him the resident spirit in his body, and then the spirit that trying to take over that body, let's call him the alien spirit. So can the alien spirit remove the resident spirit from out of its body and replace it, or is something else happens? What does it happen in possession?
Okay, we had just the case which I mentioned of that girl, of course, is in a way of possession, not an extreme case. I mean, she just heard this screaming voices in her head, but she was fighting them continuously. She didn't give in. She did impulsive deeds and suicide attempts, driven by those voices to get rid of them at times. But she always kept up that resistance. Now, there are of course possessions which go much further, that actually the whole body is taken into possession, and that in the Grail message says a possession in such a way that an alien spirit, a soul, takes over a body of a living person. That always requires that living person is spiritually indolent, and all those things Mr. Ikbanoy said, why that is why the spirit is why we are spiritually so indolent, spiritually we are intellectually very active and proficient, but spiritually we are very weak. The great majority of humanity is spiritually almost dead, kind of we are living dead more, or automata walking around. Only that allows the complete taking over of the body. And then it can happen that an invading alien soul really drives out the intruder, drives out the own soul. It's just mentioned in the message. This then causes always the death. If you are driven out of your body by an intruder, by an intruding soul, and that's taken on too long, that results in death. And it is completely impossible that this intruding spirit can take over your body and use it. So you could take that is just from the laws of creation, that is not possible. But an intruding spirit can kill someone by pushing out that the right owner, that rightful soul. So that would answer the question. So it never can happen. If you want to live here on earth, if a soul wants to live here on earth, it has to go to the proper way of incarnation, and through incarnation, through using a pregnant mother and going through the whole process of birth and growing up to have its own body. But the spirit in the beyond, or soul in the beyond, can never intrude in the body and say, oh, I get around childhood and take over body. That will result in the death of the body, and it cannot be used by anyone anymore, not by an intruding spirit anymore.
Thank you, Brother Rainer. And I've got another question, but again, I would like to, if you can answer it in a brief manner. We've talked about possession, and I just obviously of a human being, spirit, alien human spirit, trying to take over a body of a human spirit on the earth in their own body. But I just want to ask, is it possible for, as people say, a demon to take over and we would have to define what is a demon, of course, taking over a body, and or some people say possession by the devil, some other things like words like that, or some concepts like that. So, and we have clearly said in what we have been discussing tonight is purely human spirit, a disembodied human spirit taking over another human being on the earth. So just to check, is it possible, Brother Rainer, for somebody that is not human, so let's use the word demon or devil, to take possession of a human body? Just to, we may need to define what is demon and devil as well. But first, just to say, to look at that.
No, I would. No, definitely not. I would say no. With my present knowledge at the moment, I would say no. It is not possible. It's only possible for another human being. There is the necessary equalness, the necessary homogeneity for that process to happen. Also, this follows in some laws. And let us say, demon is completely impossible. It cannot take over. It cannot take over a body. A demon is just a human product. Phantoms and demons are just human products, and so how awful and what harm they can do, and they roam around in the non-visible world and can create havoc, and all what is described in the Greek tragedies about the Iranians and the demons hunting human beings. That can all happen, but they never can take over a body, or never can try to push out a body. Yes.
Go ahead, brother. Yeah, go on, Brother Femi.
Yeah, I was just going to come in there to add to what Brother Rainer was saying. As we've been emphasizing so far, there are very strict laws that governs everything in creation. You will not sow beans and expect to reap apples. You will not sow apples and expect to reap bananas. In the same way, a monkey will not give birth to a lion, neither would a lion give birth to a human being. There are very strict rules that defines the nature of the beings that exist in creation. Because human beings are just that. They're just human beings. There are other types of beings that exist within creation. And so when you talk about a demon is an entity that exists and has motive power, but it's not a spirit being. A spirit being is far more powerful, is far more superior than what is called a demon. And so it is totally impossible for a demon to exercise itself on a human being and push out the spirit being, because the spirit being is far more powerful. Now, as we've said, a spirit being that is being possessed in the first instance, that can only happen because the spirit of itself, or I should say the soul has basically weakened itself to such an extent that an external influence can become so powerful within its sphere that it crowds it out. But generally speaking, based on the natural laws, it is not normal for that which is not of a human species to occupy a human body. You know, that would be the general consistency of the law. And so, in line with what Brother Ryder has said, a demon would find it virtually impossible to attempt to occupy a human body.
Thank you so much, Brother Femi. Now we've come to the end of the show now tonight, listeners. Hope you enjoyed it. We did start a bit late, so we decided to finish a bit late as well. So thank you for bearing with us. The topic tonight was possession, and I'm going to ask my fellow colleagues to say goodbye and say a few words. So starting with Brother Femi, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would. The most important thing for us is to continue to strive and to make the effort to actually understand how life around us works, because the more we understand and the more we comply with the natural rules of life, the happier we will be, the more peace we will find in our environment, and the more progress we will be able to achieve through life. And I wish everyone progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Brother Rainer, anything you'd like to say to the listeners?
Yes, I hope that for the listeners, the discussion tonight has been fruitful and pushes the listeners to open the Grail message themselves, and they can read about those lectures which talk about obsession. And just reading it myself, I realize how very important it is to read it with all the earnestness one can muster, that every word is important, and to not come to wrong conclusions. And but I'm not going to the specific case. It relates to something here. But no, I wish then everybody good night, and we see each other then next week.
Thank you, Brother Rainer. And Brother Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners, please?
Well, nothing much other than to ensure, if they have the willingness and capability, to use the map of creation, which map is well defined within the Walk in the Light of Truth, to use that map to find their way back home.
Thank you so much, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, thank you for listening to us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, we'll be back next Tuesday the topic for next Tuesday is, it's a bit of a long one, and I'm going to say it in a few words only. Conviction, belief, and faith. It's a bit longer than that, but that's what we're going to cover. Conviction, belief, and faith. So we'd love you to join us with us next week. Just so you know, dear listeners, everything we say on this show, this is according to our best understanding at this time now. So whatever we say, don't take our word for it. Please do examine the Grail message yourself, because it is everybody's individual responsibility how you live your life and how you accept other people's words and opinions and so on. Everybody is responsible for his own belief and living their life. So whatever we say here, whether we have differences in our views here, we still ask you to look at the Grail message yourself and get your own understanding from that. So all the best, everyone. God bless. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week.
Bye bye.
Bye everyone.